All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're putting on our consultant hats to break down a process that can honestly make or break your project: plan procurement management. And look, this isn't just about buying stuff. It's about building a rock-solid, legally sound strategy for success.
You know, this whole complicated process really boils down to one huge question. Do we build it ourselves or do we buy it from someone else? It sounds simple, right? But getting this wrong, well, that's a fast track to blown budgets, missed deadlines, and a project that goes completely off the rails. The stakes are just incredibly high, which is why having a real plan isn't just a nice idea, it's absolutely essential.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the why, the whole point of this. Then we'll cover how you gather your intel, look at the tools you'll use to make smart decisions, and see how you forge the actual plan. After that, we'll touch on the key documents you'll create and wrap it all up with the bottom line, why this matters so much.
Okay, first things first. Before we even think about writing a plan, we have to be crystal clear on the goal. What are we actually trying to do here? Let's set that foundation. Let's start with the official definition from the PMBOK guide, which is basically the global rulebook for project management. It says this is the process of documenting your decisions, spelling out your approach, and figuring out who you might buy from. In plain English, it's about creating a smart, deliberate game plan before you spend a single dime. The entire reason we do this planning is to nail down the answers to 4 crucial questions. First, whether to buy anything at all. That's that big strategic choice. Second, what exactly do we need to get? Third, how are we going to get it? What's the strategy? And finally, when do we need it by? Because let's be honest, the right part delivered too late can sink the whole ship. All right, so how do we make these big decisions? Well, you can't build a great plan on guesswork. You need good information. So think of this next part not as a boring checklist, but as a full-on intelligence-gathering operation. We need to collect the facts before we make any moves.
Our intel gathering starts at the very top, with the documents that gave the project the green light in the first place. Your project charter, that's your mission brief and budget. The business case, that's your North Star. Everything you buy has to serve that core purpose. And the benefits management plan tells you when people are expecting results, which basically sets your deadlines.
Next, we zoom in a bit to the existing project plans. These give us the rules of the road. The scope management plan tells us how we'll handle contractors. The quality plan sets the standards we can't compromise on. And then there's the big one, the scope baseline. This has the statement of work, the story of what needs to be done, and the work breakdown structure, which is like the detailed table of contents. This is where we find out exactly what we might need to buy.
Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty data. Your milestone list dictates the timing. The requirements documentation is basically your detailed shopping list. And the risk register, that's your early warning system for things like supplier problems or market volatility. And of course, the stakeholder register tells you who from legal or finance needs to sign off. This is the raw fuel for all our decisions.
And finally, we have to look outside the project, at the world around us, and the company we work for. We've got enterprise environmental factors, or EEFs. Think of these as the rules of the outside world, stuff you can't change, like market conditions or laws. Then you have organizational process assets, or OPAs, and those are the rules of your own house, like pre-approved seller lists or mandatory contract templates. These aren't just details, they're the guardrails for your entire plan.
Okay, we've got our intelligence. Now it's time to actually do something with it. This is where we open up the consultant's toolkit and use some proven techniques to turn all that data into a smart, defensible strategy.
The first and most important tool is the make or buy analysis. This is that fundamental fork in the road we talked about. And it's not just about what's cheaper. It's a massive strategic decision. Do we have the skills in-house? Do we want to be dependent on a vendor for the next 10 years? Who owns the final product? Get this one wrong, and you'll be feeling it long after the project's over.
So, let's say you decide to buy. Now you have to figure out how you're going to pick a seller. It is definitely not one size fits all. If you're buying something standard like office chairs, you'd probably just use least cost. But if you're hiring a super specialized consultant, you'd use qualifications only, where their resume is all that matters. For something complex like software, you might go with a quality-based approach. Pick the best tech first, then talk money. A more balanced way is quality and cost-based, where you score both. And then you have the special cases like sole source, when there's literally only one company that makes what you need. Or fixed budget, where you say, here's the cash, show me the best you can do. And of course, you're not making these calls in a vacuum. You're using expert judgment, pulling in your colleagues from purchasing and legal.
You're doing market research to see what's even possible out there. And you might even hold meetings with potential sellers before you start the formal process, just to make sure what you're asking for is realistic.
So, all of that research, all of that analysis, what does it actually lead to? It leads to this: creating the actionable blueprints. These are the documents that are going to guide every single thing you do from here on out. They turn your strategy into a concrete plan.
And the single most important output here is the procurement management plan itself. And this isn't some side document you stick in a drawer. No, it's a formal part of your main project plan. It is the central go-to guide for how this whole process is going to be run.
And when I say this plan is specific, I mean it's the operational playbook. It lays out the exact timetable, the metrics you'll use to judge a seller, who's responsible for what, even stuff like the legal jurisdiction for the contracts. It covers how you'll handle risk, maybe requiring sellers to get a performance bond. You see, it's the detailed rules of the game that leave absolutely nothing to chance.
Now, on top of that main plan, this process also creates a few other really important documents. Each one has a specific job to do as we get ready to actually go out and talk to sellers.
And this shows you how they all fit together. The strategy sets the overall approach. The bid documents, like an RFP, a request for proposal, or an RFQ, a request for quotation, those are the formal invitations you send out. The procurement statement of work and the source selection criteria make sure every seller is bidding on the exact same thing and will be judged by the exact same rules. It's a complete, professional, and defensible package.
So, that sounds like a ton of work, right? We've gathered all this intel, done all this analysis, and created a whole stack of documents. Let's get to the bottom line. Why is all this planning so critical?
This quote from the PMBOK guide says everything you need to know. The whole point of this planning process is to build the foundation for a contract, and if a requirement isn't clearly defined in that documentation, you have zero legal power to enforce it later. Ambiguity is your worst enemy, and this whole process is designed to hunt it down and eliminate it.
So at the end of the day, the value here is threefold. A great plan helps you mitigate risk because you've already thought about what could go wrong. It creates total clarity between you and your sellers, which stops arguments later. And most importantly, it gives you that legally enforceable framework that protects your project and your company. It's all about control. And with that detailed blueprint complete, we are no longer just reacting to problems. We are strategically ready to go to market. The plan is done, the documents are ready. The only question left is, are you ready to take that next step and actually start engaging the sellers?